Welcome to Green Disruptors, Scaling the Future, a podcast where we dive into the innovations transforming clean energy and the real business challenges of making sustainability scalable. From breakthrough technologies to the tough decisions behind growth, we explore what it takes to build a greener future at scale. I'm your host, Megan Kjar, and my mission is to help green tech companies tell stories that matter. This podcast is brought to you by Mountaintop Social Marketing. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Green Disruptors. Today's conversation was so enlightening, and I am having a little too much fun doing this, actually, but I want to introduce to you Troy MacDonald. He is the co-founder and CEO of Hi-Fi Corporation, and he's focused on supporting the energy transition movement. He helps bring to life viable green projects, acting in the capacity of an advisor and an arranger of key outcomes such as feedstock supply chains, offtake commitments and financing. He used to be an award-winning investment banker with TD Canada Trust, and prior was a finance professor with HFC HSBC, where he was selected as Employee of the Year in 1995. He also heads DHT Energy Corp., which is an engineering and project development company that focuses on delivering green molecule solutions. And for more than 7 years, he's served as WPP's Energy COO and CIO, where he built, trained, and led a waste-to-energy sales force of distributors who cover more than 75 nations, and a large network to introduce WPP solutions to. So he's got a lot of experience and expertise, and what I liked about this conversation was he just has a high-level view of what stops projects from going forward. So he's there to help make sure that people are actually ready to get their funding. So thanks, and enjoy this conversation with Troy MacDonald. Okay, here we are diving in. Thank you so much, Troy, for joining today. You've got a unique perspective on climate projects. And so, well, I'll let you say hello first before I dive in.
So it's nice to be with you today, Megan. Yes, I spend about 75 hours a week easily in the energy project space, both as a project advisor and funds arranger, and as a project developer and technology provider to the segment. So I do so through a trifecta of companies.
Yeah, so you have a unique position. It's almost like you're hovering above and you're seeing all the problems and issues that people are running into, and also, I'm sure, a lot of the exciting things that people are trying to develop.
Exactly. Yeah, I see a wide range of problems. Most of them are very common among different markets, different renewable energy classes. And I try to provide usefulness to the energy transition movement by identifying those problems and helping projects intercept them before they occur, and if they've already occurred, to fix those problems.
Well, I think that would be a great place to start. First of all, from a human perspective, are companies surprised by these problems, even though you're not? And what are those problems?
Yeah, so I would say they're surprised sometimes by the seriousness or the weighting of the problem. So most common is that project developers have a general understanding of what the problems are, but they do not assign the correct weighting to the problems. For example, a particular problem might be weighted by myself as a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 to be problematic, meaning there can be no project financing. There will be no capital market interest if this particular problem is not fixed. Well, they have a general sense, oh, we need to get to it. We know it's a problem. We're working on it.
But to you, it's like, a dead in the water right now problem.
Yeah, so it's kind of like when a doctor asks you on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your pain right now? And somebody gives an answer. I usually ask, the similar question. To what extent do you think this is a problem on a scale of 1 to 10 for your business? How do you classify it versus all the other challenges you're facing? And usually I can quickly pick up on a management team that is very underprepared and does not understand how critical an issue is. And I usually bring it to the forefront and talk about what an intelligent solution to the problem is.
Do you think there's a commonality of like a top 3 of these problems?
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to just do this little workshop on the fly here. So, number 1 certainly would be the quality of the customer for whatever it is we intend to produce. So, what is the quality of the customer you're targeting here? That needs to be unpacked quite a bit. And like, what do you mean customer? Well, the project is going to produce something.
That
It's going to
someone
produce
needs
something.
or is going to buy.
Yeah, so it's either going to be green electricity, green molecules, some type of green fuel. It can be a waste recycling solution. It can be a number of different things. But there is an art and a science around selecting your customer and a lot of know-how that goes around that.
I mean, as a
What
marketer, that's
constitutes
product market fit right there. And that's
ex
number one.
e- exactly. So the capital markets, who are essential to bring these projects forward to support the energy transition, they're looking for a highly reliable, long-term client to offtake or consume anything that the project produces. So that brings us into green fuel agreements. It brings us into power purchase agreements. It brings in so many different elements. That is among the most common. And usually the developer complains of a chicken and egg scenario. How do we get that commitment from the market when we cannot show we have financing? And I'm like, well, who in the right mind would finance this if they have no line of sight as to who your customer is going to be, and
Hmm.
what that engagement's going to look like? Very important. It also crosses into fiction, which is often written into pro forma financial models. The developers make assumptions. The best numbers you can write in your pro forma, your Excel sheet, are actual contractually secured numbers, whether it be from an offtake agreement, a power purchase agreement, an LOI, an MOU, an EOI, MOA, whatever. Use the numbers. So those documents should have price, term, and duration. Those are the three elements that need to be included. So that's key, and that would be sort of number one.
Yeah,
It's
that makes
number
sense
one,
to me. I
right?
mean, that just reminds me of selling any physical product. They have all those people that come in and take the surveys. Would you buy this? But probably even more complicated.
Yes, yes. And I see a lot of developers who say, we've got $140 million in pre-orders. And I'm like, for how long? Are they one-off? Who made the promise? What does the pre-order look like? How trustable is this pre-order? Was it arranged because you have friendships in place? Was this done over a lunch, or was this done over a serious business procurement
Yeah, is this a
process?
soft
Right.
agreement or is this in a
Right. Is
contract?
this real? And the capital markets under the underwriting process will find out.
Mm,
There's no
oh, I bet they
question
will.
that if it's been a fishy, kind of fishy deal and it's not strong, it'll break in the financial underwriting process. So that is kind of number one that I really like to focus on, with the projects, really figuring that out. Another one I would say is technology selection. So there is a lot of momentum in the energy transition movement to support new technologies. It is difficult to match new technologies with traditional project finance. So your technology selection is imperative in terms of creating trustability and confidence in the project finance market. There are intelligent ways to introduce innovative technologies to a project, and it needs a bit of art and a bit of science. So we can discuss that as well. But that is the number two
Can
issue.
you give me like a case study example of that
Yes, I'm
to
going to
put you
give
on
you a
the
case
spot here?
study. Yeah, sure I can. So I'm going to not mention the company at the first part of this, and we'll come back to this company in a second. I will say I have controlling interest in the company that we're going to use as a case study. So a company has a project in a Latin American country, which is blessed by the president of the country, and it's in conjunction with a national oil and gas company. That project entails 60 5 megawatt alkaline electrolyzer cell stacks for hydrogen and green ammonia production. Now, the partners, the president, and the capital markets who support the project, like one of the two companies involved in the development, that company is very innovative. It has a technology which can lower the energy consumption of the machines greatly. That technology is not fully ready to be commercialized. It's
Mm,
just not. So one of the ways this can be done is 59 of the 60 units which are due for delivery can be stable, baseline, proven Caesar's
functioning.
wife type technology above suspicion, right at the crux. Now, the 60th unit, the 5 megawatt unit, which is still to be installed, could introduce this energy savings technology to demonstrate its performance versus the 59 that are already installed. And then as that is proven, the other ones can be retrofitted with this technology, or other projects could benefit from it. There is responsible, intelligent ways to introduce new technologies to a project. I often see this in waste to energy as well. I'm like, why don't you select a stable baseline technology which the capital markets can get behind, people can support, and if you want to bring in a technology, do it discreetly, do it under the umbrella of what you've already accomplished, prove its case, and then scale it from there. So there are ways to do it, but it is not to jam a new technology down the throat and suggest it's ready for project financing, several hundred million or multi-billion dollar project. Find a nice quiet place to demonstrate it, prove it. Don't disrupt the overall project. Don't spook your financiers. Figure a way to do this, and that's key. That would be topic number two.
That's a lot of finesse right there.
Yes, it is, and it's very, very important, and it's often a break point. I
Yeah.
have one of the worst things we often come across is a project development team that A has never done this before, which is fine. Greenfield, usually very smart people that have good business experience, so trying to cross over. But they don't have that. They don't have necessarily all the agreements they need in place. The management team is incomplete. They don't fully understand the technology equation. It's just a kiss of death, right? Each of these issues has to be completely defused. And I'll bring up the third major topic across. I just touched on it. It is the team's direct experience on delivering projects of the same or similar type. Critical. Imagine it's like a job interview to, procure a $500 million, sum of capital from the markets. It's a very serious interview process. If the team has not delivered this project like this before, the founder of the project, the builder of the project, is on the hook. They have failed. They should have, at a minimum, put a ringer on the management team to be able to raise their hand. The one person in, say, the group of 7, 8 executives in there says, I've done this before. The founder of the project, the CEO, should have recruited that person, planted them on the team in a legitimate way so that that person could submit their 50-page statement of capabilities and all the projects they've delivered
Wow.
similar before. Yeah, something like
So
that. That
how
needs to
hard
take
is
place.
that to find somebody? Because I'm sure a lot of these projects involve a lot of new technologies and,
Mhm.
so it's like, is there ever a
Yeah.
scenario where no one has done a project like this before? Or is like the structure what you're looking for? Like the structure of a
Um,
project?
sure. So I'll give you an example. All right. One of the investment funds from Scandinavia that I work with, the CEO of Hi-Fi. So we work regularly with a number of investment funds. 4 or 5 of them are out of Scandinavia. One of those investment funds um, was concerned about the management team of a run-of-river renewable energy hydro project in Southeast Asia. So they were concerned about it. The fund expressed interest in funding it. The fund had double concerns were number one, even though it was in the region that they want, the capex of the project, the cost of the project fit. They themselves, as a fund, did not have a lot of experience in this particular class of renewables. It's quite specialized. They said, Troy, we're willing to do the following, but you need to do two things for me. Number one, find us another fund that's got more experience than us in ROR renewables. Number two, I need you to lead the effort to beef up the management team with this particular project developer who had developed one similar project before, but much smaller. So the key here was I had, basically this two takeaways, one of which is with the developer, the other one is with me. The developer, I warned them actually before going. I said, your experience is a little bit light. You've only done one project around 1 to 2 megawatts of the same technology. That's not going to de-risk this enough for the funds. So I look at my Rolodex across the world. Who else is developing run of river or has developed run of river? The answer was 18 pages of results. I hired a research team for 4 weeks to do the research for me to find that data.
Wow.
Um, And then we can go through there and see who might be willing to be transplanted to support a project in the Southeast Asian nation. So I go through and find it. Similarly, in the waste energy space, I've got someone that has been involved in delivering over 100 projects globally. He's helped write a lot of the US rules and regulations, legislation around waste to energy technologies. And I use him and contact him when we need a superstar plant to help guide another team. And then they can raise their hand and I'm ready. I've done 100 of these before. Is that, good enough? So that's,
So,
I do that and arrange those outcomes. Yeah,
okay. So how do these projects that need help, how do they find you?
sure. So there are a number of different, I would say, let's call them Green Deal originators. So there are a number of renewable energy consultants who have been in the business for a long period of time. And there are people who are just generally good at business development and lead origination. I welcome all types, and I try to tend to work with a wide spectrum of people because you never know where a quality deal is going to come from. In some regions, there's not a high degree of renewable energy consultants, but great project opportunities originate there. So usually they originate from a network, and my network is, I would say, in the range of 250 to 300 very active persons around the world that are looking for these opportunities. Are compensated for lead generation. They're treated very well. So most are externally sourced, but some are very targeted. If I read, something and I know a particular Fortune 500, a particular nation, a public utility, somebody, needs help, I usually will reach out on the smaller ones. I typically let them come to me through the business development force that we have. In a typical week, I would see no less than 20 projects and probably 30 as the CEO of Hi-Fi. And then sometimes a project is so demanding or so attractive that I make a run to potentially become a co-developer on the project.
Mm.
And go that way. If it's of national significance, national importance, we can add uh, some big elements to the outcomes and help actually secure the project, get it sound. Then sometimes I'll come in. I'm presently involved in the development myself as a developer, co-developer in at least six, say significant projects around the world. Yeah.
So I'm going to go on a more personal note here. Like how did you get into this and where's your own personal passion in this?
Sure. So in 2017, I was not in this market earlier in 2017. So I was in the commodities market, working on precious metals, precious gems, and other high value commodities. To be very specific with you, I was staying at a hotel in Ghana, West Africa, and that hotel was Labadi Beach Resort, and I'll never forget it. So my first time to Africa, and obviously my first time to Ghana, I was there as a member of the Ghana Minerals Commission, a delegate. The body of water that the hotel sat on was the Atlantic Ocean. It was the opposite side of the Atlantic. I grew up and was born on the Atlantic in Canada, Eastern Canada. So I was disturbed, actually, in Ghana, noticing that each wave was bringing in hundreds and hundreds of bags of human feces in my ocean. They were all bagged. So the sewer, the sanitation system, uh, at least at the time, was not good in Ghana and is still not good to this day. So it blew my mind to think my body of water that I fish in, relatively clean, that I grew
That
up
you
my whole life,
love. Yeah.
same body of water, just on the other side, was completely different kind of ecosystem. And it had a profound effect. It planted a seed there, and then I got to see other things in Ghana as well, which opened my eyes. And an opportunity, a private opportunity arose where I was seated between, to say, two very important groups, one of the largest groups, private groups in the world, and a private individual. I was in a transaction involving them in late 2017, and an opportunity to join the energy transition movement came about. I was offered an opportunity to work for someone. I declined it and offered a partnership instead. And here we are now, where I'm involved with WPP Energy, Hi-Fi, and DHT Energy.
Wow. It does seem like everybody who's doing an important work does have that like transition moment. So,
It was a big one. I had a hard time getting my head around how this body of water was so different on both sides. It was a basic concept, but it blew me away. And like I said, it was very disturbing. I wouldn't even go in the water. It was so gorgeous, the beach and everything to look at, but it was just off limits. There's no question I was not going in. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, is there a particular project that you've been involved in that stands out in your mind as far as just the excitement levels for you?
Yeah. So I like the projects, particularly those that involve green molecules. I like green molecule projects because often they're quite complex. They require a green electron infrastructure, so green electricity infrastructure typically needs to be laid down first. There are a tremendous amount of considerations. It's kind of like a chess position that's very complex. So I very, very much love the game of chess. Um, and I like very complex projects. So my experience has been that green molecule projects can be quite complex. Many of them involve supply chains. So depending on what we're going to produce, so we're going to produce, for example, sustainable aviation fuel, we might have, sugarcane biomass as the feedstock. If we're going to claim the project is going to be green all the way through, then the power which is used to generate the plant needs to be green power, wind, solar, battery storage, something to that effect. And then we've got the technology layer of the green molecule production side, which often involves multiple technology partners. So I am involved in multiple green molecule projects um, with very strong penetration in Latin America. So we are very strong in Colombia, now Brazil, and in Chile. And there are other regions as well. We're working in Asia with a couple of nations, which we may be doing national projects for. They're under discussion and agreement stage. So that's what I would say. So, green hydrogen, green ammonia, the derivatives, green diesel, be it biodiesel or renewable diesel, RD100, bio heavy crude oil, sustainable aviation fuel, urea fertilizer, which is produced from hydrogen, ammonia, etc., or ammonia nitrate, which can be useful for blowing things up like mines or fertilizer as well.
Hmm.
So that whole piece, I would say, I'm very interested in, and my interest is reflected in national level and municipal level projects, helping federal governments in Latin America too, federal governments, and working with regional governments and oil and gas majors. So I really like that. It takes a lot of understanding and feasibility. I can go into a nation, meet with the president, and the president can ask, "What should we do, Troy, for an energy transition?" And I can pull it out and say, your nation is the third largest producer of sugarcane biomass. If you want a hydrogen roadmap, let's do this responsibly. Let's generate a high yield project. Let's leverage the national strengths of your country. Let's take so many tons of sugarcane biomass, process it, use our technology, then use Honeywell technology, make a refined product. Let's sell millions of gallons of this fuel off to the industry, secure those offtake agreements, present it to the capital markets, get the project financed, and we're off. So,
Are you finding these countries open-minded and easy to work with? Like what's the biggest barriers there?
um, some of the countries are open-minded. None of them are easy to work with.
Shocker.
So this is obviously a great question. So what I do look for is where there's very strong political support.
Yeah.
And the political support is tangible. So they will be challenged. I'm not interested in what I say, like a love letter or a letter of affection saying, we want all these great things. We'd love for you to bring money and technology and, come to our country. I'm looking for very serious support. And there are countries where we have very serious support with a president or a Congress, or there's some champion there that's driving it. You can see evidence of it. They're turning over cabinets. They're putting in pro energy transition people. They're focused on project development. They truly want to support it. I had an amazing, meeting last night with a Southeast Asian nation, which catch me up to 1 a.m. my time. That nation was incredibly responsive. That nation said, tell me what you need, Troy. We'll get it in place so you can do your thing." So it was really good to see.
this isn't a question I was planning on asking because it kind of took a different turn here, but I'm really interested. Do you see any characteristics or commonalities in these countries that are excited about this compared to ones where it just seems like you're hitting a brick wall?
Yeah. So the common element is the countries where I'm not hitting a brick wall. They can typically articulate what they want to accomplish. There are some countries which cannot even do that. So if I go into, for example, Latin American country, and the president of the nation over a 2.5 hour meeting says, you know, Troy, or my company, I want you to turn us into an exporting nation. Look at the president and say, I understand perfectly what you mean. So let's talk about this in more detail. So when a country can communicate what it wants to do, that's great. A country like, say, Nepal has a hydrogen roadmap, but it takes a lot to go through and see where it's kind of all over the place. And I've been able to identify, in my view, where they need to start, truly viable. So I love countries that have an idea about what they want to accomplish. I don't care how general it is. A country could tell me that we've got 3 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, which is being installed, which we actually do not need in the grid right now. We're looking for demand partners, off-takers. What shall we do with this green electricity, Troy? Are we a candidate to produce something from electricity, something valuable? Commodity, for example, can we use it to power a project? That I could say, go back to that example. What do you have that's a strength, a natural strength for the region? Seaports. Is there any biomass? Like we look at what the natural strengths are of the nation. And I just need to have someone that can have a real dialogue. Sometimes we'll be given a whiteboard and say, design us an energy transition roadmap. That's less common now because they're under pressure to develop the roadmaps. We certainly work on improving the roadmap and pulling out and reprioritizing certain projects. Often they have them in the wrong sequence. It just doesn't make sense, the path they've described. So I get quite excited about that when there is a vision already there that we can piggyback on and deliver it turnkey.
Well, I think that's just like broadly speaking, I think that's such a healthier way of approaching it and looking at it. If everyone can be like, okay, what do we have? What one thing can we start with? And that almost makes me understand why us in the US are so all over the place. I mean, we're so big, we have so many different states, and you have politics that change every 4 years, and it's a disaster. But my own state of Utah has come out and said we want to be a leader in energy transition. So I mean, that's still a little vague, but at least it's a smaller level, and they can come together and be like, okay, well, where can we start? That seems easier to work with than let's
Yeah,
fix climate change in the US.
yeah. When I'm in a boardroom like that too, that's always great to hear. And I'm usually the smart aleck that would smile and say, "What form of energy would you like to be a leader in?
Yeah, how cute.
What form?" So when someone talks about green molecules, I talk about what type of green molecules. What do we mean exactly an energy leader? Do we want to be a solar energy leader? Is there wind resources? Is this battery storage? Is it geothermal? Is there some
Or is it trying to make yourself
hydro?
look good for political reasons? And let's get
Yeah,
serious.
exactly. Or maybe they meant, hey, we want to make, green diesel. We've got, tremendous, agriculture, we've got biomass. So I really try to get inside what they mean by that.
Well, and maybe they
And
don't
then
even know. So having you there can help them figure out. Yeah.
Right. Right. So yeah, we can start with if there's very little, let's say they have these big ambitions. Oh, the sun conditions in the state are not good. The wind conditions are not good. I'm like, well, don't despair. You've got a lot of trash, don't you? So maybe we can do a waste through energy or, there's lots of ways to go about this to discuss it. You just there needs to be someone in the room who is multilingual across all energy transitions so that there's no bias as well. I really just want to find the viability. Like it's almost like a judgment call, the earliest pre-feasibility, superficial study or analysis or discussion about what is the potential, what should we be looking at here as the basis to start our investigation. Yeah.
Do you think that, let's say a country gets like their sugarcane exports in that greenway working really well, like is there a step two after that? Or is it like, let's just keep you running on that track?
Yeah. So if I look at a country which has a natural strength, whatever it would be, so there's going to be so many natural strengths in different countries. I mean, you can have one that has lots of elevation and water, and you do pumped hydro storage, everything. You know, I've looked at a country that's got a lot of natural strength, like these countries that have sugarcane. There's many other different biomass types. The key for the project developer is to get secure over that supply chain. So now in this environment where, you know, tariff talk and supply chains and raw materials, um, there is some correlation to what I'm talking about here. So securing the supply chain for whatever it is you're going to produce is massively important. There will be no project finance. There will be no capital support if you cannot secure your supply chain, because if you're going to produce this commodity over here, the market is going to be saying, hey, wait a second now, you've got a 10, 15-year contract. The debt that you're wishing to take, you said you're going to pay back within 10 years, but where's the certainty you're going to be able to operate because there's supply chain. So it is getting that supply chain absolutely secure. That is practically step one. You have to understand what your technology solution is going to be too. Or in this model, the sugarcane producers are not going to give you a contract if they don't believe you're going to be able to, you know, bring this project to fruition. Secure secure the feedstock for your project, whatever it might be. If you're going to make green electricity from wind, you need to make sure the wind's blowing, preferably in a good project, at least 6 meters a second at 100-foot height. So in solar, you
I
need to
learned
have the
that
right solar
yesterday,
factors.
actually.
In solar, you need to make sure you have, you know, a high availability, enough hours of sunlight a day. And if you're going to make a sustainable aviation fuel project, look at the pathways to produce SAF. One of the ones we work with in Latin America is sugarcane. Make sure you have your contract. Now you have the contract to produce the fuel. You cannot just leave it and say, I will produce it, they will come. No, not going to work. No one's going to be, you know, supporting the project. You need to show now the offtake market. You're a viable producer. Number one, you got a pathway to produce this fuel at an incredibly competitive price. You're going to be a trustworthy supplier, because if there's market softness, you need to show that your levelized cost of aviation fuel production is low, that you can withstand a market downturn, because that off-taker is not going to commit to a price of $8.50 a gallon, which is about where it is now, if it's going to move around an index. Usually it's indexed. So everything you do when you construct the project influences the confidence of the key partners. So it's going to influence eventually it's, you know, staff, technology providers, off-takers, feedstock providers, financial underwriters in the capital markets. Build a wall of bankability with tight mortar between every single brick. Every brick must be tightly laid.
And
What
I
falls
mean, that
apart?
bankability is like kind of when we went back to your three problems. I mean, that's it. If you don't have that, you don't have anything.
That's right. No, you definitely need to have these three blocks. There are so many other things that will come up. Um, Basically, I like to tell the projects that when you walk into a financial underwriting process, it's really like a court of law. On the other side of the door is a judge and jury, and they're going to evaluate evidence. That's what they're going to do. Your data room is a collection of evidence. They're going to judge the quality of the evidence one exhibit at a time. You should be able to demonstrate quickly. Here's proof of a project. It's not in my head. It's not just in this PowerPoint. Here's evidence of a project. Here's our supply chains. Here's our technology partners. Here's our commitments. Here's our team. Here's our technology selection. These kinds of things. Evidence of a project. Be ready, because there's a headwind blowing on you when you walk into financial underwriting. And sometimes even I'm surprised and still learning that a deal can break on a single contingent factor,
Mm.
which we thought we had weighted appropriately. We thought we could get over the hurdle, but it's very, very difficult. So underestimating the challenge of the capital markets, project financing, is one of the most common mistakes that all developers make. It's exceedingly difficult.
Yeah.
if
I
I,
mean, so
yeah.
you're basically coming into a project and making sure they're ready to go to court. Is there ever any flexibility? Like, let's say the deal falls apart on one contingency. Like, do they say you can come back later? Like, or is it like, sorry, we're moving on?
Both. Megan, so both. So we have both sets. Sometimes we're just moving on, where the financial underwriter could be one of the big banks. I work very, very closely with three leading American banks, two of the largest. It could be that they're moving on, that there were a combination of elements that they don't want it fixed, they just want to move on. And then there are definitely cases, I couldn't give you the percentage, but it's probably close to a coin toss. I would say it's almost 50-50, where some projects will given a chance to fix it, which is, always nice when that happens and appreciated when a financial underwriting process, they, give you a chance to fix what's broken in the project. But sometimes they're just moving on.
But you're better off to get that all as perfect as you can before you come forward.
Yes, and the challenge is that a lot of the majority of the project developers have stretched themselves very, very thin, and getting help, whether they do it internally by recruiting and bringing in, or do it externally from a project advisor or someone to do that, they have very little budget for it. So it's really difficult for them to do it, and very few projects have that kind of know-how on staff. Everybody is usually smart, but
I don't
it
doubt
takes
that
a
at
special
all.
kind of
This is the
smart. Yeah.
smartest people in the world,
Yes.
probably.
Yeah, really smart, but it takes a deep appreciation for what I call the X and Y axis of, this whole project development space, where project development meets project finance. So to understand the relationship between those two, and that we must be almost perfect along both in order to secure financing, it takes there's certain scarcity in those talents, and having those talents around and knowing exactly what to do. Sometimes management teams are confused. They don't know what comes next. So they simply haven't done it enough. I'm very seldom confused because I do it a lot, and there are
Mhm.
some good people like myself and better, in the global market. But it takes that kind of knowledge to get through this.
So, what advice would you give maybe a smaller startup that's not aligned and not ready, and maybe they can't afford somebody like you? Like, what steps could they take to get closer?
Yeah, it's trying to find free tools to educate themselves. So try to get, what the service like we provide on a no cost basis. So the education that comes from an interaction with someone like myself, and as I said, there are several in the market, and there are some who are not so good. Um, Trying to get that information and get the education any way they possibly can. So usually when we meet a project team, the first meeting is free. We're discussing how we can help. Is there a match here? Um, and if there's a high degree of need, sometimes I go a little further and do a little, let's say, pro bono work.
Steer them in the
Um,
right direction.
yes, I will. I will definitely try to, give them as many important information disclosures as possible. And I usually give them a stern warning prior to ending the call that
Well,
if there's
a
any
dose of
temptation,
reality.
yes, what I do usually tell them is if there's any temptation to disregard the advice that you're receiving on this call, please mark down the date of this call, when it took place, the date and time, and mark down what I warned you about, that it's going to come back and bite you later. These are the issues. There is no doubt. They need to be addressed. So I usually will try to go very strong, especially if I'm leaving, I'm not going to work with you again, because I want to make sure they get as much usefulness and impact as possible from that free consult.
Yeah.
I try to
Well,
hit them pretty hard with it because often they don't listen, and usually it's got to do with them being very accomplished in their own fields, often PhDs or masters, and it's doesn't serve them any purpose. In
I was
fact,
going to say that's a hard one because they are
yes,
very smart people, and I'm
yes,
sure their
yes,
egos are tied to it, and their
yes,
money is
yes,
tied to it. So,
yes,
but
yes.
the best thing they could do is put on a humility hat and listen to an expert about this.
Yeah, in the same way, when I'm in front of technology experts, when I say, "Hey, I've got a bio-heavy crude oil of, from sugarcane biomass, and I want to refine this to certifiable SAF grade fuel," the technology providers Honeywell is one, Topsoil's another. I start listening when they're talking. Teach me. I need to go deeper. These are critical issues because I have to take this and turn it into this because I have a contract that says I'm selling 50 million gallons of that a year and it's $400 million in revenue. Somebody better teach me
Yes.
the ins and
Well,
outs
it,
of this
it
because I
goes
really
back
want
to
to know.
that, goes back to the country idea. Like, we're good at this thing,
Yes,
we're good at
yes.
this, but like you can't accomplish anything without multiple brilliant people coming together. So,
It's a good point. That exactly. A good team has a mix of various different things, and often projects start with a founder or a partner. But you touched on a really good point. Some of the better projects have really well balanced teams. There's someone that can put together agreements that it's not every time you need something, an agreement, you go spend 5, 10, 15,000 with your attorney. So, having somebody that is, pretty good with agreements, someone who's good with financial modeling, someone's got good business sense, someone's doing business development and procurement, appreciates supply chains, a good mix, and some technologists on staff. That's what makes a great team. That kind of balance. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on that I didn't ask about?
I think we've covered most of certainly the key issues. I would say maybe one thing that I haven't discussed so far, the chicken and egg scenario, the chicken and egg difficulty of trying to get one of the critical things you need, whether it be a financing commitment so that you can do these other things like secure your feedstock, secure your supply chain, secure whatever. Um, and the whole idea about trying to get that, that supply chain and having the demand to have a financing letter first. Um, this is profoundly important and sits at the heart of why many projects don't go forward. So I have had capital markets professionals who became project developers tell me that they could not do what I asked them to do because it would take 6 months. And I said, it's going to take you 6 months to do what? They said, find an investment grade off-taker for this. And I'm like, well, rubbish. So have you, for example, looked at sec.gov, pulled out every single agreement which has been signed by a public company for your commodity offtake? In those agreements in sec.gov, you will find every single public company that's ever signed one of those agreements for the commodity that you wish to sell, the quantity that they bought, the price that they bought, the delivery destination, who signed for it in that company. Their agreement is already there. They probably spent $40,000 to $50,000 for the agreement. You can go into a database and find out who is buying your product that you're producing. You can reach out to the signatory of that and say, hey, if I use that same agreement and I have a good project and I can deliver to the delivery ports that you want, or you can pick it up, can we do business? I've done this before. I asked a very accomplished former investment banker basically to hold my beer that it was not going to take me 6 months. By the end of the business day, I had a Japanese investment grade company on the phone, and I had the person who signed the agreement on the phone asking on behalf of my client, would you like to increase your production? Because I also read a press release which said that the quantity they were buying on the other agreement was only 5% of what they needed. So I'm just
So
saying there
what
are
they
ways to
thought
do
was going to
this.
take them 6 months took you a
Six
day.
months. Yes, but it's not usual. But I wanted to prove a point that
Sure.
where people believe barriers exist, there can be intelligent solutions to go around them. So I've used this example with others in a meeting to say, I never thought sec.gov. I said, well, that's one of 10 different tools that you can use to overcome this. And the other thing is that if they can't get an offtake agreement, then what can we settle for? What's the compromise? The compromise is what I call a bankable LOI, MOU, EOI, MOA. That's a compromise. So what is it? What is its composition? When I say price, term, and duration, what do I mean? Those are the three elements which make it bankable. We do not want a love letter that says, oh, we love you, we support you, come on down. No, we want something much more serious. So to end this, I would say what is included in the commercial agreements and in the LOIs, MOUs, EOIs, etc. And what is excluded from them is equally important. So there are things that they will want to put in it which will disqualify your project for financing. If they want to tell you something conservative, have them write it down over here on a separate document. Don't ruin the beautiful document that you're working on with the two of them. So that's an addendum, an appendix that can live somewhere else. But that's very, very important. Termination clauses, which exist inside offtake agreements, conditions precedent written into LOIs, MOUs. I usually will try to get a CFO or a finance person of the company who wants to dumb down the agreement or dilute it to say, what are you doing? You had a perfectly useful agreement and you're in the process of making it useless. Stop it. So usually get them on the phone to say, don't do that. We're not doing this to feel good. We're doing this to take the project into financial underwriting. This is the way it needs to be constructed. If you want to say something nasty, say it over here. Don't say it in my agreement. So that's why I would say that it's very important to understand what needs to be in and what should be out. If you've got an offtake agreement in section 17 and this hypothetical agreement has letters A through L, which are all termination clauses, like if it rains on Wednesday, your contract's canceled. No, it's not. Take that out. So things like that. We need to understand what goes in, what goes out, and designing intelligent projects all the way through every step, every element.
Yeah. Well, I think, design and preparedness is the key takeaway there. And I think this is going to be a really useful conversation for, obviously any of these companies that want to develop a project but also just for lay people as well. It's like, we're so concerned about the big picture. We don't get to see behind the scenes. And it makes me just really grateful that there's people like you out there that are highly qualified experts that are helping people get over the line and helping educate people who are not there yet. So thank you for what you do. And thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Megan, it's a joy to be doing, meaningful work. I previously worked as an investment banker, and this is very meaningful where I can keep all of that knowledge and take it forward into something, and apply it in a much bigger world. So it's been a joy for me too. And I'm happy to catch up with you at any time in the future.
Totally. Well, thanks again. Thank you for listening today to Green Disruptors Scaling the Future. If you enjoyed this podcast, you know what to do. Leave us a review, share it with a friend or colleague, and help us spread the word in this important niche. And until the next episode, let's all do our small part in solving climate issues. Thanks.